this podcast, we will be looking at storytellers, stories, and the reasons that oral storytelling is important in our world today. You would think with all the technology we have available that stories do not have a place anymore, but they are needed more than ever. For in storytelling is where we find truth, we find reality, and we find the heart of what it is to be human. Welcome to the heart of storytelling. My name is Alyssa Curtain, and let's go on an adventure. Welcome to this week's episode. This week I speak with 86-year-old Brenda Berrisford, who is in Perth in Western Australia. And it was so great to have a chat with Brenda. I've spoken to her friend Jenny Woodruff earlier in the season, and it was really wonderful to hear her experiences, similar and different from Jenny's. It's hard to encapsulate how important it is to keep the voices of the storytellers that we've got who are octogenarians and who are moving on and passing on, because if we don't have a chat to them now, their wisdom will be lost forever. And if it is that you have someone in your community who is an older storyteller who no longer tells stories and you would like to nominate them to have a chat with me for the podcast, I would be deeply honoured to chat to one of those people and hear about their storytelling journey. I hope you enjoy this interview with Brenda. Welcome to this week's episode. This week I'm speaking with Brenda Berrisford, who is in Perth in Western Australia. Thank you for joining me. So Brenda, how did you get your start in storytelling? Can you tell me how it all began?
Yes, it all began at Wait. It was Wait when I started in 79, and then when I left in 84 it then became Curtain.
Oh.
And they had this, I went for library studies actually to start with, because although I worked in Mount Lawley High School for 5 years in the library as a library assistant, and then Julie, my daughter, was at Perth College, so we'd moved to Gooseberry Hill, so we came down the hill together for 5 years, and then when she was going off to university and I left Mount Lawley, I thought, I'll try for university as well, and I was 42 I think at the time, and went to library studies, and yes, I was enrolled. And then I got a job at Kalamunda High School as well in the library, so I did both. And I finally, the last year, I did, it was called storytelling for, it was a storytelling unit, storytelling for children it was, but it wasn't all about books, and I thought it was going to be. There was a unit that was called oral storytelling, and I just loved it, just absolutely loved it. And the tutor said to me, "You're a natural," and I had found my niche.
Wow.
After all those years, and because I wasn't a confident person, I was a very shy person at that time, and almost about the same time, there was a big article in the Saturday paper about the Storytelling Guild, and this was probably about 1983, and it was all a big article about this storytelling that they'd started. And it was teachers and librarians who had come through the 70s, where everything had to be real. There's no chance of you having an imagination, and they sort of, I suppose it's rebelled against it, and they joined together, and that's where it all began, and from then onwards, I mean, I must have to say that I hadn't got a lot of confidence when I went out there. I really hadn't. But then they didn't know how far they could go, and then they sort of closed it. And then along came Jenny Woodruff, who opened it up again in 1985, and we're taking it from there, actually. Yes, so we started with small things, going into schools, and I remember Hyde Park we were there. Well, I hadn't got much confidence at all. I'd have to, I'd have to admit. But I enjoyed it. I became a different person. I sort of changed, and then I realised, because storytelling is very powerful, I realised that yes, I can. I can tell a story. I can hold an audience, and then you get somebody like Deborah Pearson. I always remember. Do you know Deborah? They were a group that took people's stories and told it the story, and so we were at. It was women's, something to do, at that time in the early 80s, the women's lib, as I call them, were very, very busy and very, you knew all about them sort of thing. And this particular day, it was Women's Day, and I was going to tell this story, and it was in the little piece that's outside, between the museum and the library. There are some steps down there, still are, and it was there. So I was all dressed up with with a silky coloured dress, silky dress it was, and my daughter was with me, and we walked out, and there were all these people in green and purple, and my daughter said, "I think you're a bit overdressed, Mum." And anyway, they were absolutely charming, because I'm a sit-down person, relaxing, more of a raconteur. And Deborah Pearson had been on. She is a tall, very bold, and mixes with the audience and things, and I was just dying there thinking, oh, I've got to follow that. So I sat in my chair, and I saw their faces, and then I got to one spot, and I saw them all lean forward, and I thought, they've got it, and it's just, and I think I gained confidence from that sort of thing, And from then onwards, I think, I'm not as bad as I thought I was, really, but it does take confidence. The other thing as well, which is useful for new storytellers, is that I thought that I had to tell like Deborah. And when we had our 20th anniversary, I think it was, we had a lunch, and Deborah had been asked to be the open speaker, and she said, she was sort of talking about different styles, and she said, I was on the same programme as Brenda, she said, and I nearly died because she was so quiet. And I thought, oh, I should perhaps tell like that. And I said to you, wouldn't believe this, but I thought perhaps I should tell like that. And I think that's when we learnt. Yes. We began to learn that everybody's different, and so from then on, I think that gave us both a bit of a boost, actually.
That's great. So you said you changed with storytelling over time. Can you talk more about that?
I think it's gaining in confidence, actually. Really. Sitting down and relaxing into telling, enjoying it yourself. I think that's what it is, and having the confidence to tell it. Children will always be accepting of you, but it doesn't mean to say that, say if you go into a classroom full of say year twos or something like that, it doesn't mean to say that you're going to enrapture them straight away. You've got to, and this is what I learned, is that you judge your audience when you go in. And be ready for anything. I've told this story lots of times. I used to do a lot for Kalamunda Library during Children's Book Week because the librarian was my friend. So I used to do it for free, and the Kalamunda Primary School always used to come. So they came year one, and the next year they said they're coming for year two. So I thought, I've got to start. I better get I am a librarian, so I've got lists of different years. I must get my year twos out. So I got my year twos out, and I'm telling these stories, and all of a sudden this little boy goes, Miss, could you tell us that story about the chicken you told us last year? And everybody's going, yes. And I think, oh, because it's got a rhyme to it, a rhyme that's repeated through, and I thought, I don't know if I can remember this. But it's just a way of saying, yes, and I thought, it's flattering to think that I've remembered that. And I did remember it.
Once you start, the
Once
words
you
will
start,
come.
the words came, you know, but that sort of thing really makes your day. I was up in Meriden once, and there were a couple of younger people with me, actually, who I found later did when they'd run out of stories, told mine. But there's this one, it's Mr. Fox, it's an old one really, where he's putting things in a bag, and at the end of it, he puts this dog in the bag, and there were two boys, and I'm pretty certain they'd been to the one before. I think they'd come twice. And at the end of it, when I'm talking about this dog, he's turned to his brother and he said, and I know that very dog. It's Mr. So-and-so's who lives down the street. And those sorts of things you remember.
Yes.
And it helps. It really helps, you know, that you think, yeah, I'm not doing such a bad job after all, you know. Yeah, I really do. I really am two people. I'm a Gemini, and I really am. You know, when I go to anything like that, I come alive, quite honestly. And it's the same with adults as well.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
So would you prefer children or adults? Do you not have a preference?
I don't. Towards the end, I didn't mind. To start with, it was definitely younger people. Because I felt more comfortable with them. Adults came later. Yeah. Actually. Yeah.
So what do you think? You know, you said that the children remembered you in the stories from previously. What other effects do you think, or that you know, that storytelling, the oral tradition, has for children?
Well, the main thing is, of course, is they have to listen. And they have to use their imagination, because there's no pictures. I'm not holding a book up there saying this is so-and-so and this is so-and-so. So they have to imagine that story in you know, and think, I mean, that dog could be any dog, to a different dog to any children that are there. And it's the same with adults. I was very surprised that adults would listen as they do, you know. And again, I think when people tell you things afterwards, that gives you a boost. There are some people who have got all the confidence in the world, and I don't think they stop to think about these. But I am a thinker, and I'm always worried that I haven't gone down as well as I hoped, really. But lots of times I come away with a satisfaction that, yes, you can tell. I learnt this very, very early on, and again it was Jenny. I used to tell this Tam Lin story, a modern Tam Lin story, and it was Halloween. It was Halloween. And so we were at Subiaco Library, and it was dark atmosphere. I hadn't been telling all that long. So I told Tamlin, and I get to the end, and there's complete silence. And I panicked. And I started talking. And then afterwards, Jenny said to me, "That's a compliment." Again, I remembered that one.
Yeah.
Then you learn as you go along. There's no doubt about it. You know, you do. Oh yeah. Oh, I suppose you remember all these things actually.
It's so good that you are remembering and sharing them. Do you have preference for types of stories that you tell?
Yes, I tell them. I tell the old tales. I like folk tales, and I think that's because, as I say in here, I was brought up on stories. It started at my little infant school, I suppose you could call it, in the country during the war. And the headmaster and his wife had been brought back during the war because all the teachers had joined. So he had actually taught my dad. And so every afternoon we had a story or a poem or something to go every afternoon. And of course my dad used to tell them as well because he'd remembered them. We used to go, we lived in the country, and so he would tell us stories as we were going. So stories were in my mind as well as books. I loved books, I loved reading. Drove my mother mad because I was always reading. And when people came to the house, as they did, it was one of these houses where everybody called in, I'd be up an apple tree with a book. And she'd get so angry with me. No, so I think perhaps I was an imaginative child, actually. I think that's perhaps what it is. And so stories, but he told the old tales as well as Greek. I like Greek myths and legends as well. I like telling those. I don't tell my own stories. They're not that interesting, quite honestly. You know, I mean, let's face it, all these old stories have all got, there's lessons to learn from them. They've all got a message in them, really, and seem to go down well with other people. I mean, they could write in those days, couldn't they? Well, they didn't write, of course. They told, you know.
Yeah, I do think. I mean, your story is interesting. You know, you just brushed over the bit where you grew up in England, and I'm like, well, what happened there? When did you come to Australia?
We came to. Well, what happened was we lived in the country. We were surrounded by family. It was one of these three villages around. So my dad was one of 7, and everybody lived around in each of the villages. When we went to school, it was probably all, I'm a Hudson, all the Hudsons, all the Gregorys, they filled the school. So there was a lot of us, and there was a lot of mixing with family and things like that. There was always someone around. And then I won a scholarship to a grammar school when I was 11, and I was the first of the family to do it. And then 2 years later, my sister Doreen also won one. So we didn't have much money. You know, there was no money really for trips and things like that. I'm not sounding pathetic. It was just, that was what it was, you know, because there were 4 of us at that time, 4 girls. And so from then onwards, it was a little bit different without, and then of course, when I was 17, my dad died suddenly, a heart attack. So that left us again with a lot of sadness and no money, sort of thing. So I was working as a secretary. Joan was a nurse, but she gave that up to help my mother out, you know. So there was sadness, and there'd never been a lot of money, but we had family, and that was the important thing, I think, that also as you get older, you realise that when you live in a village, people know all your business.
They really, really do.
So things change, but I worked as a secretary, which I loved that job, and my husband was working there as well. He came later, and he was a widower with 2 boys, and so I got married quite early, actually, and then we had a daughter, Julie, and then in 1968, his mother had a half sister who lived in Australia, and they'd come on a woman's weekly tour, and the ship, you know, and they'd met up with a half sister who was my mother-in-law, and she'd said, if ever you want to come out, there's always a home here for you, or there's always a place here. So of course that was, my husband we were moving already. So we came in 1970, and we were lucky because they lived in Peppermint Grove, and they had a couple of hotels. So we had accommodation until we bought a house, and then that was in Dianella, and then I didn't like living in suburbia. I really didn't like it. And we'd been, the very first weekend, we borrowed a car and we'd been up to the hills, and I loved it up in the hills. And so we bought a house in Gooseberry Hill in 1974. And I was the only one who was happy. The others wanted to live down there. But I did love that house, actually. And I was working at Mount Norley High School Library, and Julie was at Perth College. So for 5 years we drove down the hill together, you know, and then she went to uni, and so I went to uni as well. That's the
yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
So you said you had a lot of family back in England. Did you miss that?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. Very much, actually. I'd never really been got on with my mother as such. It was more my dad, you know, but as girls, we were very close, actually. And I had an aunt who I was very fond of, spent all my holidays together with them. And I did miss family because my husband wasn't a family person. He got siblings, you know, but it didn't worry him at all, actually, you know, but it did me. And in 73, Julie and I went back to see if I was, you know, if we wanted to go back. I knew darn well my husband wouldn't say, but nevertheless, in those 3 years, the gap in my family had closed. I was the sister out in Australia, you know, but they've been back and forwards, and I've been back and forwards there, you know, as well. Well, 2 of them died quite young, actually, heart attacks. But yes, I did miss family. But I made some very nice friends here. But it really was, once I'd got to going to university and then into storytelling, my life changed. It changed completely, and I've never regretted it, actually. And I still keep. I mean, not storytelling. I come to the meetings, you know, and it's nice to meet people. But I don't tell stories anymore. I put that into my writing. I've been with the writing group since '98, actually, out in Greenmount there, and we do an anthology every year. This year's an exception, and I've been in 25. I write short stories.
Wow.
And then I've published a couple of my own short stories, one for my 70th birthday, one for my 80th birthday. But it's funny, when it comes to editing,
I understand.
I'm storytelling.
Yes.
I have to be so careful when I'm writing, and it's good I haven't got an editor. But I mean, I can see that myself now, where I go wrong. But that's the trouble. But I explain to people, I tell the story first, then we can adjust it to the written page, because I can't help myself.
I imagine that, I mean, short stories and fairy tales, folk tales, it's a short form, you know.
Yes.
What is it you like about that short form?
Well, I'm finding when I'm writing, I did write a novella, but that was a chore in a way. It was one short story I wrote when I was first starting, about a gypsy girl, and it obviously touched people, and they kept saying to me, "What happened to Rosie?" And I said, "Well, she was in a story." Anyway, for my 80th, I wrote this novella about her. It was 25,000, and I found it a chore, quite honestly. And when we do things in class, mine always is a beginning, a middle and an end, even if we've only got 20 minutes. I can't help myself. You know, I have to get the story. And of course, as you just said, it's because the stories that you tell, and they've always got an ending to them, and always got a conclusion to them. And so I think that's what I base my written stories on, actually.
So this podcast is called The Heart of Storytelling, and wanted to know what you think is at the heart of the oral tradition. What is it that you think?
I think the word heart actually is very relevant. The idea that you have to listen, I think, and work out what that story is about. And I think just there's an atmosphere when you've got the whole group listening. I mean, storytelling is very powerful. When you sit, I remember one thing at Fremantle, we were doing something at the Batavia, I forget what it is, but I remember it was a dark thing, and I leaned forward and was saying this. Then I went back, and the whole of the front row came with me. And I think that is the power of story. They are really listening and in the moment. And I think that is the power of storytelling.
It really is powerful experience. And I've only just started, so I'm only just starting to see the potential for it. I wonder, you would have seen libraries and story change over a long period of time. What have you noticed over time with stories?
It's been a while since I've done any really, but I find that a lot of people now have to do all sorts of things to get their attention. I think there's too many things now, handheld things and gadgets and what have you. And I think it might be harder to hold. I noticed someone during Children's Book Week with a head on, and I think, you feel that you've got to hear, that everybody at the back can hear you. I find that to get my audience with me, I always wait. I always sit down. If I'm sitting, I mainly sit because I move too much if I'm and I fall over. I mainly sit down, but I just wait until I've got attention. I don't know if that would work now, but it used to. Even with adults, I've done it when people are talking, and particularly when two lady teachers at the back are talking, and so I will be silent until children know what we're doing. They're looking around at the shoulder. You shut up, and then I've got them because I'm not loud, and I think that's one of the things. It must be very, very hard now, actually. And children seem to have all this attention deficit and thing they never had. I don't think when I was first telling. Perhaps they did, but there's too much for them now. There's too many other things actually. But I still think that, I do think it does have, it's something different now, and I do think that it's sort of, I suppose it's an experiment each time you go in now, because things have changed so much. But I do think one of the things is getting their attention to start with, letting them see that you are the person there who is going to tell them a story. You're going to have to listen. I mean, I've had time. I'm looking back now in time, but I haven't done it recently later. But I remember going to one school, and there was one boy, and he was wandering. The teacher said, "Don't worry about him." She said, "He'll wander," and she said, "He doesn't listen to anything now. Got problems." And I noticed about the third story, and he'd been roaming the classroom. All of a sudden, he's listening. And that was just a moment. I'm thinking, well, that's something's caught his attention.
I imagine you have lots of wonderful moments like that of storytelling moments that you treasure. Yeah.
One of the ones I always laugh about was, you might have heard me tell this, when I went up to Carnarvon, and it was nothing to do with Children's Book Week. It was a principal had wanted, so I did the whole school, and I remember it was Melbourne Cup Day, actually, and I landed at midday, and they're just finishing a lunch, so I had to go straight on. I didn't have any of the lunch. I had the babies, and then I had year ones, then I had year twos, and I told that story I'm telling you about that this kid asked for again about it's about the hen who goes and challenges the giant of stealing their eggs, and it's got a repetitive thing, you see. So I'm telling this story, and he's a little Aboriginal boy, and he's listening so hard, and then of course when I told them that one, and off they went. So I did the whole of the whatever in that afternoon. Then it was the morning, and I started again. And the last group were year sevens, and that was an highlight. A highlight on it was something that I'd not seen. The Aboriginal boys turned their backs on me. And that was a new thing. I didn't realise that they don't like women storytellers, apparently. We're talking a long time ago. Anyway, I noticed that during the story they came, you know, and then I'm just about to leave for the plane, and the year two teacher comes in and she said, "Oh, Mrs. Berrisford, before you go," she said, "we've got a surprise for you." And they rehearsed that chicken story. But the one who was doing the rhymes was that Aboriginal boy. But the funniest thing was he got my voice. It was hilarious, you know. And they afterwards they said to me, "He's the naughtiest boy in the school."
Oh, but what a moment for him to have though, like to be able to not engage, then engage, yes, and then be able to tell back part of the story.
And they, you know, they'd learnt it word for word. It was just wow. It was just lovely. So little moments like that are the ones that really make it worthwhile. I did find that country kids were more receptive, you know, than city kids, if you know what I mean. I mean that in the nicest way, but they just, when I watch Backroads, you know, I remember some of those little country towns. Not that I could live there, but they've got that gentler nature about them. They haven't got so much going on, I suppose. But little moments like that, I did actually like year twos. I really did, you know.
They're a good age.
Yeah. Yes, I said I like their logic, and someone said, "I haven't got logic." I said, "They have."
I told a story this week, and they've loved every story I've told. They're all fairy tales, and then I told a folk tale yesterday, and two of them went, "I don't like that story." So it was really interesting to see that these girls at 8 are completely in love with fairy tales, but the moment I moved into a teaching tale, they were not having a bar of it. Yeah. It was very interesting.
Well, some of the meetings that we've had, you know, with this group, and thought, these women are too earnest. Is that the word I'm using? Got to be very flexible. Yes, you might bring modern things in, but all these stories have got a moral. Every one of them, if you delve into them, they, you know, they've got a moral. It's up to you to get the message over, but don't be too serious about it.
Yes, I think after I'd finished that story, I thought, because it's about a boy who has a tree growing out of his head.
Oh yeah.
And I just thought, what I need to do is I need to fairy tale it up a little bit to engage the kids in that wonder of a tree growing out of your head. How, you know, I got the beginning right, but I don't think I got the end right, and I think that was my first telling of it. So it was really a good lesson in, okay, I need to make this a bit more dreamy, for them. Yes.
When you've got the kids in, well, I mean, you're a teacher, so therefore you know these kids. When you're not, and you go in and you have to weigh them up, but over time you've learnt their little idiosyncrasies, so you will know now which... because there are lots of tales, if you look into them, they've got moral. They've all got morals in them.
Yes, they've all got something.
All got something in there that you can relate to. But I think the reason I did that is because I remembered them from when I was a child, being told those stories. But to be honest with you, I don't think I got the morals then, really.
I don't think that's the point, though. When you're 7, 8, 9, you need the wonder.
Yes.
You need the wonder of the story.
Yeah.
And your brain glosses over the giant or the bad guy. You focus on the hero and the heroine, and the bad things don't even register in your mind until you're an adult. I guess that's why a lot of fairy tales are being cancelled, because adults are looking at these going, "Oh, that's terrible, children." But actually, children don't even notice it.
No, you're right.
They really don't notice those terrible
right,
things.
I think because they're listening, and if you can put that wonder into your voice, they will relate to it. I've never had anybody walk out or anything like that. I always sit there till the end. But as you get into it, as you've been doing it for years, like I'll sort of say, do you know, this story isn't working. Let's have another one. And they will accept that, but you've got to have the confidence to say, no, this story isn't working.
Yeah, and it's because it's a two-way conversation or three-way conversation with the story. Yeah, I guess it's about watching for those signs that it isn't working. That they're not
you're
engaged.
in front and you can see them.
Yes.
This is I often say to the teachers, who always sit at the back, don't you? I always said, if you could see what I could see, the expressions on their faces, and I can actually see with some of the young ones when they get it. Yeah. And they're waiting for.
Or I know what's going to happen next. That excitement that they have when they know what's coming next, which is really.
And you get this with all ages. I remember Euripides and who's the one who Apollo? I can't remember which of the gods are, but anyway, his wife Eurydice, she goes off into the underworld, and he goes to try and find her, and he said, if you go and you don't turn your back, she will be following you. Do you know the story? I mean, it's a Greek myth and legend. But he does turn around. He forgets, he turns around, and she's then got to live in the underworld all this time. And they were year 8 at one of the Gosnells High School, if I remember. These girls sitting there with their miniskirts and things, never thought it. And at the end, one of them said, "Oh, miss, that is so sad. Why did you make her die?" and again, I was really. And there's another one. I think there's a picture somewhere of this boy. These were year 10s, Melville High School, and this lad who'd got legs longer than me, they came slouching in. It's in here, slouching in, and he sat practically in front of me like this with his legs out like this, as much as say, "Okay, amuse me." And I told the story of a Kelpie, one of the river Kelpies in Scotland, who turns into a young woman. And I had to tell them what a Kelpie is, by the way, to start with, not a dog. And at the end of it, he said, "Is that Kelpie still alive?" And I thought, "You little so-and-so, you've been listening. You've been really listening." And that's a boy who's about 15, but it was just the way he'd slouched in and said, "I don't really want to be here," sort of thing. So it is having to listen. That's the important part. You've got to engage them, And of course, when you're a storyteller like me and you don't walk around the stage or things like that, you have to try really hard actually to grab their attention. But after time, you learn that you can do that. I mean, we do come in all shapes and sizes, but when you realise what is your best thing, then stick to it. That's what I always say. It was funny going to Singapore in 1990. I went back in 95 to ask me to do some workshopping with the primary school teacher, because then there were no male teachers doing primary. It was all women. And at the end of it, one of them said to me, "But where will I put this into the curriculum? It's so strict." I said, well, you teach English, don't you? I said, you slip it in there, you'll find a way for it. But she was quite concerned that it was so rigid. But then years later, they started up this storytelling guild, and it's absolutely flourishing.
It is flourishing.
I met up with them,
Yeah.
and when I was over there about 5 years ago, they took me out for dinner and things. We were talking stories over the dinner really, but they're all so keen and eager. And I thought, oh, I hope I made an impression here actually, because there's no storytelling back in 1990 or even 95. You know, their curriculum was so tight, but obviously now. But funny enough, they never asked me to tell a story.
Oh. Just to teach how to tell a story. Just to teach how to tell a story.
When I went the last time there, I thought, oh, and they were so pleased to see me and everything like that, but I wasn't invited to anything. It was interesting.
So you did tell stories in Singapore at some point?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Have you been anywhere else in the world to tell stories?
No, not in the world. Well, I did in England, and that was because I got relatives over there. No, I haven't travelled as much as I would have liked to have travelled, but I've never been free to be able to travel over. No, so it's really Australia, really, that's been my main thing, and Singapore. Oh, and I went into Malaysia once. You know, that was Kuala Lumpur. But I was told in Singapore as well, and I took this to heart, is speak slowly. Remember that in Singapore English is, but in Kuala Lumpur it was very much a second language, you know, so but I learnt that sort of when it was a bit too late, if you know what I mean.
Well, I mean, that's good advice really, because in Australia you can't go to a school now that's not got at least half a dozen kids who are not from a second language, like it's a second language. So speaking slowly is actually really, really good things. But, you know, the idea of, you know, just slowing down, I mean, once you create that atmosphere where you capture them, you can go as slow as you like, you know, because they're hooked, they're in it, aren't they? Which is really great.
Yeah. I think this is the best advice I would give to anybody is and also making sure they know that it's you when you very first start, you know. And I'll tell you another thing that I learned as well along the way is, because if you can hear, I'm very English, but I will say, like up in the north, I say, I'm going to tell the stories from my tradition so that the Aboriginal boys won't turn away and that sort of thing. I just felt that, you know, I learnt so much. I think it's done so much for me, actually, storytelling, you know, in confidence more than anything, to know and do something right.
Do you miss it?
No, not really, because you know, it takes a lot of arranging to go to these different people, and I'm not getting any younger. I enjoy my writing, and I think I put it into that, you know. But I really enjoyed this meeting, this intergenerational storytelling. I really enjoyed meeting those children, because I don't have grandchildren, and so I don't mix with that age group, or any age group really, and just to find that they are the delightful children, no, they won't, young adults, that aren't racing around, really nice kids.
Thank you so much for joining me today in the podcast. It's been really, really great having a chat to you.
Well, thank you for asking me, actually. I hope I have done some help there, but I do tend to talk a lot.
Well, you're not the only one. Most storytellers do.
Well, that's our episode for today. I hope you've enjoyed learning about storytelling and folktale, fairytale, myth, legend, or personal tales, wonder tales, all sorts of stories, and the art of storytelling, and why we really need to continue using it today. You can find more information about me at alyssacurtain.com or at Alyssa Curtain Stories on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube and TikTok. I hope that you can find your heart in storytelling.